大家好，我是 Jenny， 欢迎来到沉思者 J。 有一个故事，一个女孩从江南小镇走出，她的父亲告诉她，女孩也可以学习科学。这句话改变了物理学的历史。他叫吴健雄，英文名字叫 Chien-Shiung， 他是20世纪最重要的实验物理学家之一。他的实验推翻了一个物理学界奉行30年的定律，那个定律叫做宇称守恒。今天我们要聊的就是这位让全世界物理学家震惊的女性，一位用双手和智慧改写科学史的人。故事从一个江南小镇说起。1912年，在中国江苏省太仓县浏河镇，一个女婴诞生了。她的父亲吴仲义是个教育工作者，他创办了当地的明德女子学校。在那个年代，让女孩上学已经是很进步的想法了，更别说学习科学。吴仲义是个不寻常的父亲，他告诉小健雄，你和任何男孩一样聪明，你可以做任何你想做的事。这句话在小健雄心里种下了一颗种子。吴健雄从小就展现出惊人的学习能力，他在苏州女子师范学校读书，成绩始终名列前茅。他特别喜欢数学和自然科学，那种对知识的渴望，让他不愿意只停留在江南小镇。1936年，吴健雄24岁，他做了一个大胆的决定，他要去美国读书。那个年代，一个中国女孩独自漂洋过海去美国求学，需要多少勇气，可想而知。他原本打算去密西根大学，但在抵达美国之后，一个朋友建议他去加州大学百克莱分校，那里有一位名叫欧内斯特·劳伦斯的物理学家，他刚刚建立了世界顶尖的核物理实验室。吴健雄听了之后，决定改变计划。这个临时改变的决定，让他走向了物理学的核心。在百克莱，吴健雄遇到了改变他人生的2件事。第一件事是遇到了他的指导教授赛格雷。赛格雷是诺贝尔物理学奖得主，他很快就发现吴健雄是个天才。他后来说，吴健雄是我见过最聪明的学生之一。第二件事是遇到了她未来的丈夫袁家騮。袁家騮是中国著名政治人物袁世凯的孙子，他也是一位杰出的物理学家。2个热爱物理的人在百克莱相遇，他们的感情在科学的土壤中慢慢生长。1940年，吴健雄完成了他的博士论文，他的研究主题是核分裂。这个题目在当时非常前沿，他的实验结果让百克莱的教授们印象深刻。然而一个现实问题摆在他面前，那个年代的美国学术界对女性物理学家并不友善，更何况是一个来自中国的女性。吴健雄在找工作的过程中屡屡碰壁，许多大学甚至不愿意考虑他的申请。1942年，他和袁家騮结婚了，婚后他们移居东岸。吴健雄先后在史密斯学院和普林斯顿大学任教。在普林斯顿，她成为第一位在物理系授课的女性教授，这在当时是非常罕见的事。真正的转机出现在1943年，美国政府秘密启动了一个改变历史的计划，那就是曼哈顿计划。美国要研发原子弹，他们需要顶尖的核物理学家。吴健雄的名字出现在了征召名单上，他加入了哥伦比亚大学的研究团队，参与了铀浓缩和核链反应的研究。他解决了一个困扰工程师们的关键问题，那就是核反应堆中的氙毒效应。核反应堆在运行过程中会产生氙135，这种物质会吸收中子，让反应堆无法正常运作。吴健雄的研究帮助解决了这个问题，让核反应堆能够稳定运行。虽然他不是直接制造原子弹的科学家，但他的贡献对整个曼哈顿计划至关重要。战后他留在哥伦比亚大学继续研究，并在那里度过了他学术生涯中最辉煌的岁月。现在我们要讲到吴健雄最重要的故事了，那个推翻了30年定律的实验。要理解这个故事，我们需要先了解什么是宇称守恒。在物理学中，宇称守恒是一个关于对称性的概念。简单来说，如果你把一个物理过程放在镜子前面看，镜子里的物理过程应该和真实的一模一样，就像照镜子一样。 左右翻转了，但本质是一样的。宇称守恒的意思是，自然界在镜像对称下是不变的。这个定律在强相互作用和电磁相互作用中都被验证过。物理学家们理所当然地认为，这个定律在弱相互作用中也应该成立。1956年，两位年轻的中国裔物理学家提出了一个大胆的假说，他们是杨振宁和李政道。他们仔细审视了所有关于弱相互作用的实验数据，然后得出了一个惊人的结论：没有任何实验直接验证过弱相互作用中的宇称守恒。那些物理学家们信以为真的东西，其实从来没有被证明过。杨振宁和李政道在论文中提出，也许在弱相互作用中，宇称是不守恒的。这个假说在物理学界引起了轩然大波，许多物理学家不相信，也不愿意相信。伟大的泡利甚至说，我不相信上帝是个左撇子，意思是他认为自然界不可能有这种不对称性。杨振宁和李政道需要有人做实验来验证他们的假说，他们找到了吴健雄。吴健雄在实验物理学领域的声誉无人不知，他是做这个实验的最佳人选。吴健雄接受了这个挑战，他设计了一个极其精密的实验，实验需要在接近绝对零度的超低温下进行。他使用的材料是放射性的钴六石，在超低温的环境中，钴六石的原子核可以被磁场排列成整齐的方向，然后观察这些原子核衰变时，电子发射的方向分布。如果宇称守恒，那么电子在上下两个方向的发射量应该相等，就像照镜子一样，左右完全对称。吴健雄的实验团队在美国国家标准局工作了好几个月。低温技术的挑战极大，要把温度降到接近绝对零度，需要极其精密的设备和操作。1956年的圣诞节假期，大多数科学家都回家过节了，吴健雄留在实验室，继续他的工作。他有一种预感，这个实验将会改变一切。1957年1月9日，实验结果出来了，电子在两个方向的发射量并不相等，宇称不守恒了。吴健雄看着这个结果，他知道这意味着什么。自然界是不对称的，上帝确实是个左撇子，物理学的一个基本信念，就这样被他的双手推翻了。这个消息在物理学界引起了地震般的震动。泡利收到电报的时候，几乎不敢相信自己的眼睛，费曼也被震惊了。许多物理学家立刻开始重新思考他们对自然界对称性的理解。杨振宁和李政道凭借这项理论研究，在同年获得了诺贝尔物理学奖，速度之快令人惊讶。从提出假说到获得诺贝尔奖，只用了1年多的时间。然而吴健雄没有获得诺贝尔奖，这件事成为了科学史上最著名的争议之一。做出决定性实验的人没有获奖，而提出理论的人获奖了。许多科学家认为这是一个巨大的不公正。诺贝尔委员会的这个决定被后人反复讨论和批评。吴健雄自己对这件事的态度是克制而有尊严的，他从不公开抱怨，他继续专注于他的研究工作，用实验说话。宇称不守恒实验之后，吴健雄继续在哥伦比亚大学做出了许多重要的贡献。1960年代，他投入了对贝塔衰变的深入研究。贝塔衰变是原子核物理中的重要现象，他的研究帮助精确验证了费米的弱相互作用理论，进一步巩固了粒子物理学的基础。他还研究了血红蛋白的分子结构，这个研究跨越了物理学和生物化学的边界，展示了他广阔的科学视野。他用物理学的方法研究生物分子，为后来的生物物理学开了一扇门。吴健雄在科学研究之外，还是一个积极推动女性科学教育的人。他深知女性在科学界面临的障碍，因为他自己就曾经面对这些障碍。他在演讲和访谈中多次强调教育机会的重要性，鼓励年轻女性勇敢追求科学梦想。他说过这样的话：一个人不应该因为性别而被阻挡在科学的大门之外。科学需要所有聪明的头脑，不分男女。1975年，吴健雄成为美国物理学会第1位女性主席。 这个位置象征着她在物理学界的最高地位，也象征着一个时代的改变。吴健雄一生获得了无数的荣誉，他获得了美国国家科学奖章，那是美国科学界的最高荣誉。他获得了沃尔夫物理学奖，这个奖被许多人视为诺贝尔奖的最佳替代。他还获得了普林斯顿大学的名誉博士学位，而普林斯顿曾经是他第一次在物理系授课的地方，那个不接受女性学生的大学最终向他致敬。吴健雄有一个外号叫做东方居里夫人，这个称号固然是一种赞美，但也引发了一些讨论。为什么女性科学家的成就总是要和另一个女性科学家比较，而不是直接说她是20世纪最伟大的实验物理学家之一？吴健雄后来曾表示，他希望人们评价她的时候只看她的科学成就，不要因为她是女性或者是中国人而给她加上任何标签。科学是没有国籍和性别的。她和丈夫袁家騮的婚姻维持了60多年，直到吴健雄在1997年辞世。他们是科学上的伴侣，也是人生上的知己。袁家騮后来说，他是我所知道的最勤奋的科学家，他对科学的热爱从未消退。吴健雄在晚年曾多次回到中国大陆和台湾，他关心华人科学教育的发展。他在台湾的演讲激励了无数年轻学子，他告诉他们，不管你来自哪里，科学的大门对你是敞开的，只要你有足够的热情和坚持。他有一个著名的观点，他说物理学是一门需要想象力的科学，不仅仅是计算和公式，更重要的是对自然界的直觉和想象。这种想象力是他在那个寒冷的实验室里，在接近绝对零度的世界中感受到的。吴健雄的一生是一个关于坚持的故事。他在一个不欢迎女性的领域里坚持了几十年，他在没有人相信的假说面前做出了改变历史的实验。他在没有获得应有荣誉的情况下依然继续他的研究，不抱怨，不放弃。他的故事告诉我们，真正的科学家爱的是真理本身，不是奖状，不是头衔，是那个实验成功的瞬间，是那个数据揭示真相的时刻。那个从江南小镇走出来的女孩，用她的一生证明了一件事：自然界或许是不对称的，但科学精神没有性别之分。好了，今天的故事说到这里。吴健雄的一生是物理学的一个奇迹，也是人类追求真理的一个缩影。如果你觉得这集有意思，记得按赞订阅，让更多人认识这些改变世界的人。我们下次见咯。Hello everyone, I'm Jenny. Welcome to Thinker J. There is a story. A girl walked out of a small town in southern China. Her father told her, "Girls can study science too." That single sentence changed the history of physics. Her name was Chien-Shiung. She was one of the most important experimental physicists of the 20th century. Her experiment overturned a law that the physics community had upheld for 30 years. That law was called the conservation of parity. Today we are going to talk about this woman who astonished physicists around the world. A person who rewrote the history of science with her hands and her mind. The story begins in a small town in the Jiangnan region of China. In the year 1912, in the town of Liuhe in Taicang County, Jiangsu Province, a baby girl was born. Her father, Wu Zhongyi, was an educator. He founded the local Mingda Girls' School. In those days, letting girls attend school was already considered a progressive idea, let alone study science. Wu Zhongyi was an extraordinary father. He told young Chien-Shiung, "You are just as intelligent as any boy. You can do anything you set your mind to." Those words planted a seed in Chien-Shiung's heart. From an early age, Wu Chien-Shiung showed remarkable intellectual ability. She studied at the Suqiao Girls' Normal School. Her grades were consistently at the top of her class. She had a particular passion for mathematics and the natural sciences. That hunger for knowledge made her unwilling to remain in her small hometown. In 1936, Wu Chien-Shiung was 24 years old. She made a bold decision. She would go to America to study. In those days, a young Chinese woman crossing the ocean alone to pursue graduate education in America required a tremendous amount of courage. She originally planned to attend the University of Michigan, but after arriving in the United States, A friend recommended she consider the University of California at Berkeley instead. There was a physicist there named Ernest Lawrence. He had just established one of the world's leading nuclear physics laboratories. When Chien-Shiung heard this, she changed her plans. That spontaneous decision led her to the very heart of modern physics. At Berkeley, two things happened that changed her life forever. The first was meeting her doctoral advisor, Emilio Segre. Segre was a Nobel Prize laureate in physics. He recognized Chien-Shiung's brilliance almost immediately. He later said she was one of the most talented students he had ever encountered. The second was meeting her future husband, Luke Qiulu Yuan. Yuan was a grandson of Yuan Shikai, the prominent Chinese political figure. He was also a distinguished physicist in his own right. Two people who loved physics found each other at Berkeley. Their relationship grew slowly and naturally in the soil of science. In 1940, Chien-Shiung completed her doctoral dissertation. Her research focused on nuclear fission. This was a highly cutting-edge topic at the time. Her experimental results deeply impressed the professors at Berkeley. However, a practical obstacle stood in her way. The American academic world of that era was not welcoming to women physicists. Even less so to a woman from China. Chien-Shiung faced repeated rejections as she searched for academic positions. Many universities would not even consider her applications. In 1942, she and Yuan married. After their wedding they moved to the East Coast. Chien-Shiung taught at Smith College and then at Princeton University. At Princeton, she became the first woman to teach in the physics department. This was an extremely rare achievement at the time. The real turning point came in 1943. The American government secretly launched a project that would alter the course of history. That project was called the Manhattan Project. The United States was developing an atomic bomb. They needed the finest nuclear physicists available. Chien-Shiung's name appeared on the list of scientists to be recruited. She joined the research team at Columbia University, contributing to work on uranium enrichment and nuclear chain reactions. She solved a critical problem that had been confounding the engineers. This problem was known as the xenon poisoning effect in nuclear reactors. During reactor operation, xenon-135 is produced as a byproduct. This substance absorbs neutrons, preventing the reactor from functioning properly. Chien-Shiung's research helped solve this problem, enabling nuclear reactors to operate in a stable and sustained manner. Although she was not directly involved in building the atomic bomb, her contributions were vital to the entire Manhattan Project. After the war she remained at Columbia University to continue her research. There she spent the most brilliant years of her academic career. Now we come to the most important part of Chien-Shiung's story. The experiment that overturned a 30-year-old law. To understand this story, we need to first understand what parity conservation means. In physics, parity conservation is a concept related to symmetry. Put simply, if you observe a physical process in a mirror, the mirrored version should be identical to the real one. Just like looking in a mirror, left and right are flipped, but the fundamental nature is the same. The conservation of parity means nature is invariant under mirror image reflection. This law had been verified in strong interactions and electromagnetic interactions. Physicists naturally assumed that this law should also hold in weak interactions. In 1956, two young physicists of Chinese heritage put forward a bold hypothesis. They were Tsingtao Li and Chen Yang. They carefully examined all the experimental data on weak interactions and reached a stunning conclusion. No experiment had ever directly verified parity conservation in weak interactions. The thing physicists had simply taken for granted had actually never been proven. Li and Yang proposed in their paper that parity might not be conserved in weak interactions. This hypothesis sent shockwaves through the physics community. Many physicists did not believe it, or did not want to believe it. The great Wolfgang Pauli reportedly said, "I refuse to believe that God is a weakly left-handed person," meaning he could not accept that nature could possess such asymmetry. Li and Yang needed someone to conduct an experiment to test their hypothesis. They turned to Chien-Shiung. Her reputation in experimental physics was legendary. She was the ideal person to perform this experiment. Chien-Shiung accepted the challenge. She designed an extraordinarily precise experiment. The experiment needed to be conducted at ultra-low temperatures near absolute zero. The material she used was radioactive cobalt-60. At these ultra-low temperatures, the atomic nuclei of cobalt-60 could be aligned in a uniform direction using a magnetic field. Then she would observe the directional distribution of electrons emitted during the decay of these nuclei. If parity were conserved, the number of electrons emitted in both directions should be equal. Like looking in a mirror. Perfect left-right symmetry. Wu Chien-Shiung's experimental team worked at the National Bureau of Standards for several months. The challenges of cryogenic technology were enormous. To bring the temperature down to near absolute zero required extremely precise equipment and meticulous technique. During the Christmas holiday of 1956, most scientists had gone home to celebrate. Wu Chien-Shiung stayed in the laboratory, continuing her work. She had a premonition. This experiment was going to change everything. On January 9, 1957, the experimental results arrived. The number of electrons emitted in the two directions was not equal. Parity was not conserved. Wu Chien-Shiung looked at this result. She knew exactly what it meant. Nature is asymmetric. God is indeed left-handed. A fundamental belief in physics had just been overturned by her own hands. The news sent an earthquake through the physics community. When Pauly received the telegram, he could barely believe his own eyes. Richard Feynman was also stunned. Many physicists immediately began rethinking their understanding of symmetry in nature. Tsung-Dao Lee and Chen Yang won the Nobel Prize in Physics that same year, based on their theoretical work. The speed was astonishing. From hypothesis to Nobel Prize in just over a year. However, Wu Chien-Shiung did not receive the Nobel Prize. This became one of the most discussed controversies in the history of science. The person who performed the definitive experiment did not receive the award, while those who proposed the theory did. Many scientists considered this a profound injustice. The Nobel Committee's decision has been debated and criticized by posterity ever since. Wu Chien-Shiung's own attitude toward this matter was one of restraint and dignity. She never complained publicly. She continued to focus on her research, letting her experiments speak for themselves. After the parity experiment, Wu Chien-Shiung continued to make important contributions at Columbia University. In the 1960s, she devoted herself to an in-depth study of beta decay. Beta decay is a crucial phenomenon in nuclear physics. Her research helped precisely verify Enrico Fermi's theory of weak interactions, further consolidating the foundations of particle physics. She also studied the molecular structure of hemoglobin. This research crossed the boundary between physics and biochemistry, revealing the breadth of her scientific vision. She applied the methods of physics to the study of biological molecules, opening a door that would later lead to the field of biophysics. Beyond her scientific research, Wu Chien-Shiung was a passionate advocate for women in science. She understood the obstacles that women faced in the scientific world, because she had faced those obstacles herself. In her lectures and interviews, she repeatedly emphasized the importance of equal educational opportunity, encouraging young women to bravely pursue their dreams in science. She once expressed the idea that no person should be barred from the doors of science because of their gender. Science needs all brilliant minds, regardless of whether they are men or women. In 1975, Wu Chien-Shiung became the first female president of the American Physical Society. This position symbolized her standing at the very summit of the physics world. It also symbolized the changing of an era. Wu Chien-Shiung received countless honors throughout her life. She received the National Medal of Science, the highest honor in American science. She received the Wolf Prize in Physics, an award that many regard as the finest alternative to the Nobel Prize. She also received an honorary doctorate from Princeton University, the very place where she had first taught in a physics department. The university that had once refused to admit women as students finally honored her. Wu Chien-Shiung had a nickname, the Chinese Madame Curie. This title was certainly intended as a compliment, but it also sparked some reflection. Why is it that the achievements of women scientists must always be compared to another woman scientist, rather than simply saying she was one of the greatest experimental physicists of the 20th century? Wu Chien-Shiung later expressed that she hoped people would evaluate her based solely on her scientific achievements, without attaching any label to her because she was a woman or because she was Chinese. Science has no nationality and no gender. Her marriage to Luke Qiulu Yuan lasted more than 60 years. Until Wu Chien-Shiung passed away in 1997. They were partners in science and confidants in life. Yuan later said that she was the most dedicated scientist he had ever known. Her love for science never faded. In her later years, Wu Chien-Shiung made several trips back to mainland China and Taiwan. She cared deeply about the development of science education among Chinese-speaking communities. Her lectures in Taiwan inspired countless young students. She told them, "No matter where you come from, the doors of science are open to you, as long as you have enough passion and perseverance." She had a famous perspective. She said that physics is a science that requires imagination, not just calculations and formulas. More importantly, it requires an intuition and imagination about the natural world. That kind of imagination was what she felt in that cold laboratory, in that world approaching absolute zero. The life of Chien-Shiung is a story about perseverance. She persisted for decades in a field that did not welcome women. In the face of a hypothesis that no one believed, she performed an experiment that changed history. Without receiving the recognition she deserved, she continued her research, without complaint, without giving up. Her story tells us, a true scientist loves truth itself, not prizes, not titles. It is that moment when an experiment succeeds. It is that instant when data reveals the truth. The girl who walked out of that small Jiangnan town proved one thing with her entire life. Nature may be asymmetric, but the spirit of science knows no gender. That is our story for today. The life of Chien-Shiung is a miracle of physics, and a portrait of humanity's pursuit of truth. If you enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe, and help more people learn about the people who changed our world. See you next time.